Derek Bassage here with your first schematic of your class, or pneumatic circuit, I guess I should say. And we're going to talk about this. In every module that you come into in your labs or in your class, you will have a circuit just like this. There'll be a video where I'll explain how this circuit works. I'll show you some pictures of the equipment you're going to use when you come into class. I'll compare the two, and that way you have a better understanding of how things are supposed to look, how they're supposed to work before you come into class to do your hands-on. So the first thing we see here is we have a pressure source on the left side. We have a push button in the middle, and we have a single acting spring return cylinder up top. When we look at these pieces of symbology, it's hard to sometimes put those into perspective when you come in and look at the equipment. So I want to give you a quick explanation of how this works. Your push button here on your pneumatic circuit has all these little arrows and how things are hooked up and how it should look, and that's exactly what you'll see on your push button. This is a picture of a little print that is on the push button, and we're going to use this little print symbol here, and this will kind of tell you how to hook that valve up. As you can see here, there's a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3 on this valve. We're actually going to use this number 2, not the number 2 over here. So disregard this one right here. So whenever you see a number 1 when you come into class, that indicates where your system pressure is going to be coming into that valve. So this number 1 here is where we're going to hook up our system pressure. So you see this elbow up top here with this little blue fitting. This elbow is where we will connect our hose from our system pressure coming into the valve. And then you can see that number 3 is our exhaust valve, and then number 2 over here will be where our pressure is ported out to our cylinder. So let's go back to our circuit here, and we can see we have a pressure source. Now anytime you see an empty triangle like that on a circuit, you know that this is a pneumatic circuit. If this triangle was filled in, this would be a hydraulic circuit. Because it's not filled in, it's a pneumatic circuit. And all that's showing you is that your pressure source is coming from another print, and on another print there is probably a schematic of your compressor unit and how it all works. And then instead of drawing all that on this print and making it really confusing, they just draw this little symbol. So this just shows where your pressure source is coming in. Then we have our pressure hose going to our valve, and as you can see, it is hooked up to our number 1 port. And on this number 1 port is where our system pressure will come in, as we showed you in the picture. We can see here that we have a push button with a spring return, and it's waiting. Our system pressure is now blocked. Our single acting cylinder is vented to atmosphere, and the spring is holding it in the retracted position. So when we push our push button here, we actuate this, it'll shift this box on the left side over here to the right. It'll shift our spool inside of our valve. And now this arrow right here will be taking our system pressure from number 1 straight up to number 2, and it'll be right here. This blocked port right here will now be aligned with our exhaust port. So now our system pressure is allowed to travel through the valve and up to our single acting cylinder. It'll start to build pressure inside of this cylinder housing behind the piston. And then once enough pressure is built to overcome the spring inside, it will extend the cylinder to the right, and any air that is trapped inside of the housing will be pushed out through your exhaust port. That's what that little triangle there is. It's an exhaust port. As long as you hold that button, the cylinder will stay extended. Let me erase some of my drawing here so I can go over how this is going to be retracted. Now when you let go of the push button and it is sent back to its at-rest position or non-actuated position, the spring will overcome and shift the valve back to its at-rest position. Now the valve will be in the current state it is right now, where the spring, there's no more pressure being ported through number 2, so the spring will now overcome the cylinder and start to push it back to the retract position. Any air behind the piston in the cylinder housing will now be forced back through port 2 and now over to port 3, which is our exhaust valve, and vented to atmosphere. This exhaust port will now allow air to travel back into the cylinder so it doesn't create a vacuum lock. And then the system will be waiting again for someone to push the valve and start the process all over again. Every time you come into this class, there will be one of these videos, or every time you check into a module, there will be one of these videos waiting for you to explain what your circuit should look like and how it should operate. That way when you come into class, you can explain to me what the print says, how the valves operate, and then you can build it and show me that it works. I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing you in class.